1950, directed by Michael Curtiz, Kirk Douglas leads the cast of Young Man with a Horn. Here's the setup. An orphan, Rick Martin, is a loner. He's then befriended by a musician played by Juano Hernandez, which leads to Rick getting a hold of his first trumpet.
Hi, Pop. Is this really you?
Inspired by the life of a real-life early jazz virtuoso known for his inventive solos on the cornet, Bix Beiderbecke.
Jazz, romance, and coded queer characters? In 1950, Hungarian-born Michael Curtiz, the man who directed The Adventures of Robin Hood, Casablanca, and 176 other films, explored something more in Young Man with a Horn. Pour a cup of tea and let's talk about it. Today we're discussing the jazz classic Young Man with a Horn to explore its iconic role in LGBTQ+ film history. Believe it or not, this is the first film where the lesbian character is not killed off to pay for her perceived sins. Through coded subtext and some outright moments, this film reflects deeper themes than what was commonly seen in Hollywood at the time. But before we get into that, let's talk a little about Michael Curtiz and why he was such a versatile director. Michael Curtiz is best known for his ability to work across genres, from swashbuckling adventures such as The Adventures of Robin Hood, to romantic war epics like Casablanca, to noir in Mildred Pierce. But no matter the genre, Curtiz brought his expertise in emotional storytelling to every film he made. In my research, I learned the word auteur, which comes from the French word for author, and describes a director that has such a distinct style they are considered an author of the movie. Because of Curtiz's flexibility with genre, there is an ongoing discussion on whether he can be referenced as an auteur.
Michael Curtiz deserves a lot of credit. Curtiz was one of the greatest champions of movement.
In Young Man with a Horn, Michael Curtiz wasn't just making a movie about jazz and finding your passion in life, he was also exploring relationships and identities that were complex at the time for mainstream media. This film follows Richard Martin, a man married to his trumpet, as his first love interest Joe, played by Doris Day, says. But more than just his rise in the music world, the story revolves around his complicated relationships with Joe and Amy, his eventual wife, played by Lauren Bacall.
I was playing a game, it's play acting. Anyway.
Lauren Bacall brings her magic to this movie with her restless and charming character Amy. While the film never says it outright, her character gives a peek to something more ambiguous in a time when Hollywood couldn't be direct about queerness because of Hays Codes. Amy North breaks many trends of the time by talking about family history of mental illness, going to become a psychiatrist, and mentioning to her husband she met a girl. While watching this film, my best friend Casey exclaimed, "This is one of the first movies where a woman actually has a fucking life." It's never stated, but I'm sure Amy's internal struggle with her identity and her family's past guides her to becoming a psychiatrist. At the time, Hollywood was tightly bound by the Hays Codes, which restricted the portrayal of any content labeled immoral, including but not limited to homosexuality. Directors like Curtiz have had to find ways to explore these themes subtly. Amy's rejection of traditional gender roles, in contrast to the picture-perfect femininity of Doris Day's character, and Amy's lack of interest in heterosexual relationships, can easily be read as queer-coded.
Your husband. That's a laugh. Amy, why'd you ever marry me?
I think it was a wonderful experience for both of us. Besides, how do you know about anything until you try it?
Rick and Amy's whirlwind romance and subsequent marriage comes to an end when their tension boils over with Amy saying she can't stand to be touched by her husband. Meanwhile, Rick's obsession with his music instead of his relationships with women adds another layer of ambiguity. His trumpet becomes a metaphor for desire, identity, and escape. And in some ways, so does his relationship with his best friend Willie, Smoke Willoughby.
And that was when I met him. I've never seen such an intense, searching expression.
This isn't the first time Curtis tackled themes of identity and relationships outside of the norm. In Mildred Pierce, he explored the complexities of female independence and motherhood, while Casablanca gave us a bittersweet romance in difficult times where love doesn't always win. Since Young Man with a Horn's release in 1950, many more queer films have come out. Unfortunately, we are still recovering from the bury your gays trope that was not an entirely unintended consequence from the Hays Codes. The Hays Codes, enacted in 1930 and strongly enforced from 1934 to its petering out in the 1960s due to the coming sexual revolution.
Yeah, baby, yeah!
They were repealed in 1968 and replaced with the current MPAA rating. During the time when Hays Codes were active, all scripts had to be reviewed and approved by the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America. The only times a queer-coded character was approved for the silver screen was when the queer character got punished for their perceived deviant ways. A great example of the bury your gays trope is The Children's Hour.
I can't stand to have you touch me. I didn't mean it. Oh, I feel so damn sick and dirty. I can't stand it anymore.
Where a lesbian named Martha says she is disgusted by herself. The movie ends with her committing suicide while her lesbianism is equated with mental illness. This did not stop when the Hays Codes were lifted. Two examples of that would be Charlie's character from Supernatural, where she is chopped up and left in a bathtub, and Lexa in The 100, who accidentally got shot, which opened the floodgates for speaking up about killing off gay characters just to do it. While it didn't make waves for its LGBTQ themes back then, today the film has found a new appreciation among modern viewers for its subtle exploration of identity. Young Man with a Horn makes waves even by today's standards by allowing Amy's character to leave with the woman she has started to fancy while Rick is not seen hitting or talking down to her. It shows how director Curtis navigated restrictions to tell a deeper, more layered story. In Young Man with a Horn, Curtis used music as more than just a soundtrack. It becomes a metaphor for the character's struggle with identity, freedom, and desire. It may not be as overt as today's films, but it's a reminder of how coded LGBTQ+ stories were being told even in Hollywood's golden age. So next time you watch a classic film, remember, there's always more playing beneath the surface, especially with a director like Michael Curtiz at the helm. Since Young Man with a Horn's release in 1950... What were the words? Let's be real. If you'd rather a gay person be dead than just have nothing to do with them...
It might be a dog.
There's a dog! Serious face. Very serious.